friends are since.
In today's video, what I'm going to be doing is looking at another new feature of the Polyend Tracker, which Polyend have introduced in the latest beta firmware, which I believe is version 1.4.0b1. Quite a snappy name, I'm sure you'll agree. This is not an official firmware version, and the caveat has to be, of course, that this is subject to change. But I thought it was interesting to show because it's kind of a unique addition, this particular feature, and nobody else has really shown it up on YouTube or anything, so maybe you're curious how it works, and that's what I'm going to show you. Two usual caveats. One, I've literally not tried this yet, so I'm going to be trying it out as we go through this live, essentially. The other thing is that in order to show you the screen correctly, it's quite hard to show you the details on the screen as well as give you an overview of the thing itself. But aye. So what am I actually talking about? Well, most trackers run in a vertical kind of direction, and if we go into a pattern here, you'll be able to see that the screen here, the patterns run up and down the way, and that is standard for almost all tracker software, or all tracker software that I've seen before anyway. And this is one of the unique things about trackers, and dare I say it, one of the reasons people like them, because it is a bit of an alternative workflow and a different way of engaging with your sequences, as opposed to the traditional kind of left and right step sequence, or like a Roland Groovebox style display. Polyend have taken the decision to implement an optional horizontal mode in the new beta firmware, and that's pretty interesting, and it's also been a wee bit controversial because people who like trackers have kind of said, well, what? It's not really a tracker if it's going horizontal, is it? And I have some sympathy for that. If you use trackers because it's an alternative workflow or an alternative method of displaying things, as opposed to every other kind of sequencer in the world, which is, well, most sequencers which are horizontal, then I can see why you might be a bit perturbed by this move towards horizontal tracking. However, they're not forcing you to use this, and if the horizontal view helps the tracker become more accessible for people who haven't used trackers before and are a bit put off by the idea of this strange vertical display, then great. And I am also never going to criticise a company, especially a wee company, for doing something a bit innovative and a bit different. So good on them for trying it. The real question though is it any good, and is it going to work, and will it make me sick from looking at it? And I don't know what the answer to that is. So what I'm going to do first is just add in a pattern, any old pattern, so that I can have something to show you on the screen and demonstrate what I'm talking about. I'll just try and grab a couple of kit sounds, anything will do. Cool, so I've got a couple of 505 kick sounds, or drum sounds rather. Cool, let's do kick, record it. Listen to that, rhythmical genius. So if I take off the record mode, you can see it scrolling up and down. This is the kind of normal expected behavior if you're looking at a tracker. So let's have a look at the new horizontal mode. I'm a wee bit nervous about this. First of all, we're going to config. Then on the left here, we have the different pages for the menu, and you get to it by going to pattern arrangement. So it's under general. We'll go down to pattern arrangement and then change it to horizontal. Pattern. Oh my goodness. This, as someone who's used trackers quite a lot and learned to make electronic music on LSDJ on the Game Boy, the idea of a horizontal tracker is just weird, and I don't know if I'll be able to wrap my head around it. Even this kind of blows my mind. So I guess okay, so that kind of works as expected. So basically you have your tracks on the left here, so 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. The behavior of the scroll wheel is different now, because if I scroll left and right on the vertical view, it would go up and down, but obviously here it's going left and right, which is messing with my mind a wee bit. So I guess the only way to go up is to use the arrow keys. That's fine. I guess let's just play it. You know what? It's actually not that bad. What? Okay. When it's running, it makes a lot more sense than it does when you're just looking at it like this. Maybe this isn't the case if you're purely used to using horizontal displays anyway, but if you've got any experience with kind of vertical displays, I think at first this is going to be pretty fucking weird. When it's actually running, it makes a lot more sense because you can see the motion. And this was the bit that I was most worried about, was the idea that I would end up feeling sick looking at it going left and right. But actually, yeah, that's not an issue. It seems alright. The one thing is, it does stop at the end like that. It doesn't roll over. And I don't know if that's the same with if it's in vertical mode. Let's see. I like that you can hot swap it though. Like, you don't have to stop the pattern. That's smart. Aye, so that's one thing that's a bit weird. So here you can see that essentially the track keeps going. It never really stops the display in a static way. Whereas if you have it in the horizontal mode, at the end, it does stop. Like it freezes, kind of, or it looks like it freezes and is static. And the only kind of motion you get is the green kind of active step or active part, I guess. And that's a bit weird because it feels like you're moving. Oh, it stopped. Moving. You know, and it would be better if they had the kind of continual motion there that you get on the vertical tracker. Maybe that's something for them to look at. Now, the big thing that I find confusing on this is navigating around and inserting things seems odd. This will be partly because I've been using the tracker in horizontal mode, but it also just it definitely throws you for a loop. And I would suggest that this isn't something that you would want to switch between all the time. To test out adding things in the horizontal mode, I'm going to add in this wee bassy acid sound. These samples are from Samples from Mars, by the way, and every year they do a great sale with lots of all their samples are very cheap, and I would recommend it if you ever see that, like 30 quid for hundreds and hundreds of samples. So I wonder. You can hear my timing there, it's terrible. Fairly straightforward, actually. Nothing too complicated. I'm being thrown for some reason by the end of the pattern because there's no obvious end to me where the last bar is. The only indicator is the number of the bar here, so you need to know the length. Whereas in vertical view, there's an obvious end, and that means that it's a wee bit harder for my brain to work out where I am when I'm moving around. Here I can go like, okay, I'm at the top of the pattern and now I'm at the bottom, and that's it. I can't like go, it doesn't loop around again, if you know what I mean. Whereas when I'm in horizontal mode, it does stop with the fader or the controller, but if you use the arrow keys, it doesn't. And because the screen doesn't change, there's no gap on either side when you come to the end or beginning of a pattern, then it's not as obvious. So that makes it a wee bit harder. I wonder what happens if I use... Yeah, okay, so the behaviour is the same with the jog wheel and the keys, so that makes sense. But there isn't the visual indicator, which is a shame. I think if they could figure out a way to put a better visual indicator for the end of the bar, that would be much better. Let's try adding in some bass notes with a step. So essentially using the step function so that when I add a different step in, it'll jump across 2 steps. See, so it's fairly straightforward to do that, and actually your brain kind of gets used to the horizontal thing fine. I imagine, you know, after like half an hour or so of this, you'd be able to get used to it anyway. So that's fine. But the lack indicator has actually really thrown me, because I'm not entirely sure where we are, and it's a bit strange that, you know, you've got track 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all very bright and very prominent, but the bar indicators are not, or the beat indicators, whatever they are, the step indicators, sorry, they're not that prominent, and it means that you're always like, oh, where am I on the actual pattern itself? Fine, it's a tracker. So there's not much else to say about that, really. I'm going to play about with it a wee bit. I don't think I'll be using the horizontal mode, because to me, vertical arranging on a tracker is one of the things I like about it. But I can see how this would be, you know, useful or interesting to other people, especially if, for whatever reason, they just can't get to grips or just don't gel with a vertical display. At least if they have the horizontal option, then they can make use of all of the other features and niceties of the tracker without, you know, having to bend their mind to the vertical view. In terms of implementation, it actually works quite well, and it's surprisingly much easier to get used to than I thought it would be. As soon as you start seeing things moving, it just makes sense. It's not like a total mindfuck or anything, which I expected it to be. I don't feel sick or nauseous or whatever. But the big oversight from my perspective is A, that when you play the pattern, the motion isn't smooth like it is on the vertical display, as in it doesn't continuously move. And the other big issue for me is the lack of proper indicator visually for the start and end of patterns. So you're always a wee bit unsure of where you are in the pattern, at least immediately. And I'm sure you would get used to that, but I think they could easily make it a lot more, usable or friendly or visually responsive by adding it in, that kind of thing we're used to from the vertical trackers where you get the start and end. See? That perpetual motion, whilst also having the visual indicator of the start and end of the pattern, is one of the big pluses of a tracker, or vertical display trackers. So aye, that's pretty cool. Let me know what you think about it. Maybe you think horizontal trackers are sacrilege and of the devil, and if so, then I'm not going to argue with you. I may be of a similar disposition, but it's not as bad as I thought it would be. Kudos to Polyend for trying out something new. If they could add in and change the visual display a wee bit, I think it would make it 100 times nicer to use. So maybe they'll do that. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.